Hi, this is Stacy from Stacy Rabbit Jewelry. Today I'm going to make a simple strong bracelet using the Soft Flex beading kit, Surfs Up. I am going to string this bracelet on the fine beading wire from Soft Flex. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is unroll some of this wire from the spool. And then so this whole spool doesn't unroll on me, I'm going to put this little clip back on. And so I'm going to work right from the spool today. So the first step is to start stringing on your beads. And I've already laid these out, but if you have this kit, you could do a completely different beading pattern. So I am just going to thread all of these on. You can see they're going on just like this. I have now beaded all of my beads onto my line. And one of the things that I noticed is that my length of my design is a little bit shorter than I would like. So one of the tips that I have when that happens is to use size 6 or size 8 seed beads. You can either put them on the end like I'm gonna do here to give you a little bit of length, or you can mix them into the design as spacers. So now that I have my beads and my little seed beads to give me the extra length, I'm gonna go ahead and finish off the first end of this bracelet. So I'm gonna start with this loose end, and I am gonna pick up what is called a crimp tube. And I am gonna put one of those tubes onto the end of my wire. And then I am going to put a lobster claw clasp onto this end of the wire. And what you need to do to finish this off is send your wire back through your crimp tube. I like to also take it through at least one of my beads. I find that this kind of hides the end a little bit so you don't have a sharp, pokey piece. And I also feel like it makes the design a little bit more secure. You'll notice here that there's some movement of my clasp. You don't want to tighten this down so tight that you can't get that open. So the next step is I'm going to come in with, I just use the Beadalon crimping pliers. I know there's a lot of different varieties out there. So you're going to put this crimp tube. Before we do that, I failed to mention something important. You want to make sure your two wires don't crisscross in the tube and that they're right next to each other. So I've already made sure that that's the case. So we're going to put the crimp tube into the back of the pliers and just squeeze. And what should happen is it should make this little shape here. Looks kind of like a taco, where each pass of the wire is in its own little channel. The next thing you're going to do is come back in with the crimp pliers, and you're going to put the partially crimped crimp in the front nose of the pliers, and you're going to squeeze. And that's going to basically make the cylindrical burrito shape. At that point, what you can do is trim off your excess wire so it looks like this. So what we're going to do is cut the wire on this side, and I like to leave a little bit of space. I find it's much easier to get the wire through the crimp tube if I've got a little bit of wire to work with. So I am going to first make sure we add on the 5 seed beads like we did to the other side so that it is symmetrical. And then we are going to do the same thing. We're going to put on our crimp tube. And on this side of the bracelet, we're going to want to use some jump rings. So we are just going to, when I can get a hold of it, thread a jump ring on here. And then just like we did before, go back through the crimp tube, back through 1 or 2 of your seed beads. So it should look something like this. The next thing is we don't want to loop quite that big. So we're going to tighten that down. One of the things that I like to do is kind of use gravity to help tighten this up. And again, you want to make sure that it sits in a nice orientation to wear as a bracelet. If you make it too tight, you're going to lose mobility in your design. So I actually like how this is. The rings can move, the beads can move a little bit. And so I'm happy with this. So again, you want to make sure to the best of your ability, it's a little bit harder on this side, that your wires are not crossing inside the crimp tube. And you're going to come back in with your crimp pliers and put your crimp bead in the back jaw of the pliers. You also want to make sure, because seed beads and a lot of these other beads are glass, that they are outside of the jaw of the pliers, because if you chomp down on a glass bead, you will break the bead. And I've done this myself and it's resulted in many tears. So trying to avoid that pain for you. So we are going to go ahead and squeeze down on that back jaw and then do the same thing. We're going to rotate the pliers, put the crimp in the front jaw, and squeeze it down to make that burrito shape. So we have this excess wire. We're just going to come in, trim that off, and here is your finished design. If, and I like to do this, you want to make this bracelet be extendable, you can add some additional jump rings onto the clasp part of your design. So I am going to show you how to do that if that's of interest. And so what you're going to do is put your jump ring in a chain nose pliers and have another one in the other hand. And to open a jump ring, you're going to just twist one of the pieces toward you. Just like that. You're going to go ahead and hook that on to the other jump ring, and you are just going to do exactly the opposite. You're going to kind of twist back and forth until they're aligned, and sometimes I just clamp on them to work harden it a little bit. If you want to add a third jump ring, you can just repeat that same process. Thank you for joining me for this simple bracelet tutorial and my creative bracelet from the Soft Flex Surf's Up bead design kit.